Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of our TVWD, Tualatin Valley Water District's Talking Water podcast. I will start with giving a little overview of the format for these events. They are a brief presentation. Today we think the presentation will last between 10 and 20 minutes. And then we do follow that up with a question and answer session. We try to stick to the advertised time, but we want to assure everyone that we will stay on the call and answer all the questions that come in, even if that does run after one. We also want to walk you through the controls for the Microsoft Teams. It's a little bit like Zoom, but a little bit different. There are emojis that are under that reaction section. If you're joining us by phone, that's a little bit different because you can't see the slide deck. But if you just raise your hand, or when we get to the Q&A section, if you unmute yourself, we will take those in order. For accessibility reasons, we do have closed captioning, so it's really helpful if we don't talk over each other. So we will mute participants if we need to along the way. You will get a message if you've been muted that that's happened, and it tells you how to unmute yourself. But we do ask that if we've muted you, that you stay muted so that others can hear on the call. And again, just be patient. It does take us a little bit of time as the questions come in. There's a chat if you're joining us on the app or a computer. That looks like a little thought bubble with a question mark in it. When you click on that little thought bubble, you can type in your question. So I already have some hands raised, which is really unusual, and I see that, and I will call on you in just a moment. Also, just to remind our people who may be joining us for the first time in these Talking Water sessions, we post the slides and a video recording of them, and those are available through a link on our website, which we'll put in the chat, so you have that available. But you can also just go to our website, type in virtual forum. It's under the About tab, and you can go back and review any of the materials we go over today. We also know that fluoridation is one of those subjects that people can get pretty passionate about. And we just want to remind our viewers and participants today that we do operate under harassment-free and inclusive practices. So we just ask that you keep your comments, free of vulgarity, like personalization, be respectful. We know that people don't have the same point of view on this, but we want to keep this series going, and we want to keep everyone who joined us today in the room able to participate. If it gets out of hand, we will remove you, and we just don't want to do that. We've done over 25 episodes. We've never had to do that. Again, our staff, we're going to be really patient. We're going to stick with you. We're going to answer any questions. We don't limit the questions to the topic at hand. We'll answer any question you have about your water system. And if we can't answer it with the experts we have on today's call, we'll follow up with you via email or phone call and get in touch with you and get your question answered. So I see all the hands are down now, so maybe I covered your topic. Feel free to raise it again if we didn't. And I'm going to go to the next slide, and I'm going to introduce for you today the subject matter experts that you'll be hearing from. I'm going to start over on the right-hand side. Justin Dyke, he's in the communications group. He's an outreach and engagement specialist. He's been with Tualatin Valley Water District for just over 4 years. He does a majority of the construction outreach, and if you have an outage due to something we've planned, he's usually the person you're going to hear from. At the end of the presentation, he's going to moderate the question and answer session for us today. In the middle there, we have Pete Boone. He's our Chief Operating Officer. Pete has a long history with TVWD. He's held a variety of positions. He's currently the Chief Operating Officer, but he's been with the district since 2008. He has degrees in forest engineering and civil engineering from Oregon State University. Just like to congratulate you on your Civil War win this year. We'll see you next year. When he's not working, he joins outdoors. He's also a volunteer firefighter and EMT, and he and his wife, Selena, live in Forest Grove. So we just welcome Pete. He'll be answering questions at the end. And then our main speaker today is the picture the furthest to your left there, Joel Carey. He manages the Water Resources Division. Among other things, his division is responsible for all aspects of water quality. He and his staff do the monitoring, the sampling. They issue the annual water quality report, which summarizes the water samples that are taken regularly to make sure that our water meets or exceeds all water quality requirements. And Joel also is really involved in our new water supply source protection and some of those plans. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Joel. And thanks again to our customers for joining us today.
Thanks, Andrea. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for being here and present about this topic. So, yeah, as Andrew pointed out, we're going to save some space at the end here. In fact, most of the space of today to be able to answer any questions you have and create an open dialogue. So, just a little bit of agenda here today, and just to let folks know, we're going to try and only spend about 10-15 minutes, as Andrew pointed out, just going through a few slides. Talking about the drivers for what some of you may have received as far as a notification, a postcard, or the social media communications that we put out. So yeah, just a quick recap for our agenda here today. So we're going to talk about fluoride, obviously, and we're going to kind of go through a few key points um, about the process of TVWD and the decisions that we've made in terms of the temporary pause. So we'll start with why fluoride is added. We'll touch on how and where it's added. So a little bit of a spoiler alert here. It's not everywhere. Not all parts of TVWD are fluoridated, nor how we actually add it at key locations. And then we're going to touch on the temporary fluoride pause. So who's affected, why are we doing this, and generally how long it will last in terms of our current timeline. So why is fluoride added? So some historical context is probably important for folks. Some of you may be aware of this, some of you may not. So the decision to add fluoride was made by voters in 1963. There's a little inset map up there you can look at. We'll actually display that a little bit later with a bigger picture of that. But that decision goes back to 1963, which was when it was voted for approval by 60% voting yes at that time. The little inset map that you'll notice there's two different colorations for TVWD. That is all of TVWD, and again, we'll touch on that map in a few more slides, but just to give you an orientation towards that. Back in 1963, it was actually two different water systems. So the blue area is what was called Wolf Creek, and the yellow area was what was called Metzger, both different water districts at the time. So that's the driver for why, if you look at a fluoridation map for TVWD, that's the section that is currently fluoridated, the blue part, and the yellow part is not. So, in the Metzger portion, those residents never voted on the practice of fluoridation. So there's a picture from our historical archives there of an employee at the time, shortly after 1963, actually beginning to install some of the equipment for water fluoridation. So just again, with that context to understand why TVWD has two distinct areas and how far back the practices goes, let's just touch base on, what we do and how we do it, and some high level details here. So a few key points we wanted to get out there, folks, to understand is that TVWD only uses sodium fluoride in this process. That's been the practice for the last several decades. And it's also important to know how much we actually add. So that's 0.7 milligrams per liter to the system at key entry points that we'll discuss here in a minute. So just for reference, that's the same as 0.7 parts per million. You'll often see that on your bills. If you do look at that individual bill, a lot of folks might be on auto pay, but you can still download that. You'll actually see that printed on the bottom as a reference point. So this amount is determined by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Other partnerships from the federal level include CDC, the EPA, and the state level OHA. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services who makes that ultimate recommendation about 0.7. Just to take a step back from some of the historical context, about 10 years ago, that's when that recommendation was changed. It used to be a range, and a range based on likelihood of consumption based on the part of the United States you lived in terms of weather, like hotter climates consume more water versus colder. So about 10 years ago, that they went from a range of about 0.7 to 1.2 down to a target of 0.7, which the district has enacted at that time. So, and then just another important point to note. The exact amount of fluoride you consume is based on how much water you drink or eat, effectively how much water goes into your cooking, and other forms of intake. Food that you consume that you don't prepare at home, other methods of intake. Obviously, there's fluoridated toothpaste for your enamel. Other things, though, that again again, would impact your ingestion or at least application of fluoride. So we just point that out because it's important to understand that, we're one component of this. And it goes back to that first sub bullet point, which is that there are other forms, which is why we added at 0.7 parts per million. So another important point I wanted to make is that TVWD, within this process, we follow a lot of industry practices. One of the things that we go above and beyond, though, is that for every shipment that comes through, TVWD has an independent lab analyze and certify that the product meets the specifications provided to us by the manufacturer for analysis. So our staff will go out whenever that batch comes in. We look at all the lot numbers. We collect independent samples, send them off to the lab. We make sure everything is alignment for quality control through this whole process. So it's one of the things we do to try and go above and beyond this process. As Andrew noted up front, we know there's folks that feel strongly on either way about this. So it's the best option. Excuse me, it looks like I need to take control of this again. It's the best um, method we can apply to make sure that we are following all industry best practices and going above and beyond. So some key points to get to this decision about the temporary pause. So where is fluoride added? Well, there's a little bit bigger picture of the map that we talked about earlier on that prior slide. As we noted, this is the driver for why areas of our system are fluoridated versus some that are not. The blue area is the fluoridated portion at 0.7 milligrams per liter, same as parts per million. The yellow area is not fluoridated, again, what we generally call the Metzger service area. So um, for those of you that call and ask us often, or dental clinics, things of that nature, this is one of the drivers and one of the reasons why we often point you to our website and the map so folks can understand which part of the district you live in. So you'll notice on the map there's some those are some of the points that we add. In fact, those are the points we add fluoride as water enters our system. So our source waters are not fluoridated at the source itself, which would typically be the treatment. So TVWD adds fluoride as the water comes into our system at these key locations, our primary feed points for our sources. The different points is really the key driver for why the pause is happening. Just to point this out, if you look at those those 5 stars there, as we advance the next queue here, you'll see some of those change. So if you're looking at the stars, you'll see some on the right there of the screen. Those 2 locations above the red or black triangle, those are the locations that, based on the fact that the majority of our supply goes through that point, we're going to need to pause while construction happens. So it's roughly 2/3, about the majority of our supply enters through those locations where we add fluoridation. So because of this construction, it's necessary for us to make this temporary pause. So a little bit about that. We have a few more points to bring up with that, just for folks to understand the details driving this decision. So this is a necessary and temporary action that we have to take. That picture you'll see in the background is a picture of our new supply system going in. You can see the scope and scale of the type of work going on here in this excavation site. So the pause is related to the construction of the new Willamette River system. And again, those primary addition points will effectively go offline starting the first part of January. So construction timing, it's not an exact thing. We're really good about planning this stuff out. There's a lot of working components that go into this. Right now, we're looking at a January through March timeline. That is the window of time that we can make this work based on the contractor, based on TVWD supply and demand. But there is always still a little bit of wiggle room that might happen around that. So we'll talk about it here in the end, but we want to make sure folks get directed to our social media posts and our district website to make sure that if things do change a little bit, we'll make sure folks understand that via all the communication tools that we use. So some key details about the construction. So just exactly what is happening. Well, as we just talked about, TVWD, along with our partners, the City of Hillsborough and the City of Beaverton, are constructing this new Willamette water supply system from the Willamette River, which will start serving customers by 2026. So a new 48-inch steel transmission water main that's being built along Western Avenue will connect to an existing large 54-inch transmission main that we have on Beaverton Hillsdale Highway, which requires a shutdown of that primary entry point that we talked about in the prior map. So as you'll see there in the picture in the little graphic, that's actually Western Avenue as it meets Beaverton Hillsdale. That's Western Avenue looking south towards Allen Boulevard. And the little outline box there is the actual construction site as that pipe uh, will meet our existing transmission supply line pipe on Beaverton Hillsdale. So if you go back, just to give you a reference point, this isn't the exact location, but that's a lot of what the work will look like with the contractor and TVWD staff out on site, making sure that these two large transmission pipes connect. So you can see the scope and scale of what we're doing here and the necessary time it takes to make these connections work. It goes without saying, some of you may have heard this, but this is our seismically resilient supply we're building. So there's some really important drivers for us as this new system will eventually serve all of TWD service areas, including the Metzger portion. So that will not change the fluoridation, just to be clear. But as far as water supply goes, this new system will serve all of TWD service areas. So just briefly, we thought it'd be important just to touch on this item. Since we're talking about the new supply system, what does that kind of look like at the highest level? That new system utilize an existing intake that's being expanded, or it has been expanded on the river. That's item number one, down outside of Wilsonville. If you kind of follow the pathway from south to north, you'll go up there to point number two, which is where our new state-of-the-art water treatment plant is being built. That's a multi-barrier treatment process that will make sure that we meet all the regulatory requirements and exceed some of those requirements as well in terms of treatment. So once water leaves that plant, continues through the transmission system, you'll look at the infographic down there, and you'll see item number 3 and 4. As it makes its way through various transmission pipes, it will split, and you can kind of see how that map relates to the prior ones as it splits there and out the Y and makes its way to the construction site and other parts of TBWD. It also goes the other direction to some large water storage tanks. We call those terminal storage outside of Cooper Mountain, where that supply will at that point move past that and feed other communities, including Hillsborough, additional parts of Beaverton and parts of TBWD. So that's just a brief little overview of the supply system that's being designed and constructed. Again, one of the key drivers for the need to have the temporary fluoride pause as we're working through this construction component of tying the new system with an existing system during this period. So as we pointed out, we really didn't want to spend a ton of time actually going into too many details about this. We really wanted to make sure we had the opportunity to let all the questions you might have for the forum here. So myself, Justin will facilitate. Pete Boone, who you saw earlier, our Chief Operations Officer, is present. We have other subject matter experts on the call. So with that, happy to start answering questions, and I'll hand it back to Justin to start that process.
Thanks, Joel. And happy to have folks raise their hand or ask questions via the chat. We'll try and rotate between the two of them to give everyone equal opportunities to have their questions responded to. And we already have one hand up. And again, as we get through this, apologies if I mispronounce anyone's name as I call on folks, but we did have a question from Sharon. Sharon, why don't you go ahead and come off of the mute and ask away?
Yeah, thanks. Question, can we opt in or opt out from the fluoridated water? Or is there a plan in the future to implement something like that?
Good question, Sharon. So right now, for the residents that live in what we'll call the blue area, the main portion, no. That vote that happened at that point, all of that service area of TBW is fluoridated. The district staff, along with the board, have always maintained the fact that it needs to be the choice of the public. So there is always the option to pursue a ballot initiative through that process. But as far as staff and board level decision goes, there's no initiative on our part to stop the fluoridation or to start in Metzger, frankly. Again, this this is in the hands of the customers of the district to do anything further about stopping fluoride or including it in the Metzger portion of our system.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Sharon. And looking over to the chat, I'm not seeing any questions there, but if there are any other folks who would like to ask a question and that are on the call or on the phone, now is a great time as well to come off of mute and ask your question.
Say there's got to be some questions online. I know we tried to explain most things as the driver for this. I would just add to folks that again we wanted to stress the fact that this is only temporary, and we're going to do our best to update folks along the way just about when things get restarted again. So, but yeah, happy to answer any questions if there's details folks want to know, or they're just, and as Andrew pointed out up front, these forums are meant for anything and everything. So if you've got questions beyond that, feel free to ask questions beyond fluoride. Feel free to ask those questions as well.
And it's a great time to remind folks in the chat, Andrea had posted a link to the project website for this construction. That is the reason for the pause of fluoridation. That website is tvwd.org/fluoride for a short link. It might be a little bit easier to remember, but that is where we'll post construction updates. As Joel said, we'll do our best to plan out every stage of that construction process. But as things might wiggle or move by a day or two here and there is where we would be posting those updates for the exact pause start and the resumption of fluoridation. So we ask folks to remember that website, tvwd.org/fluoride, and feel free to go to it to get those latest updates. And I did see a hand get raised and then promptly pull back down. If anyone has a question, please chime in. Ed, do you have a question?
I have my microphone on. Okay,
Yep.
good. I'm still recovering from an inelegant Windows update that now has me as UU, unknown user, even though I use Teams almost every day. I think you're doing a great job on this project. I've been following it for a long time. Also, you're doing an excellent job of communicating what you're doing and why you're doing it and how it's going to go. I didn't have much more to offer than that, other than that there's always room for positive feedback when it's justified. And negative feedback seems to move all on its own. Positive feedback needs a push. So here it is. And that's it.
Thank you, Ed. That is fantastic, and we appreciate you taking the time to offer some positive feedback. You're definitely right. Sometimes it is easier to offer the negative feedback, so we do appreciate you. We also have a comment from Doug Cooper who says, I couldn't see any of the presentation slides due to something with Teams. Any guess, any idea of what should change? Sometimes that is just an issue with Teams or with different operating systems, but this presentation is being recorded. We will post it onto our YouTube channel afterwards, and that way you'll be able to view all the slides via the YouTube version of the presentation in full. So hopefully within about an hour or so after we're done here, that YouTube link will be available and we can get that over to you so you can rewatch it. Sorry if you have to listen to all this twice. And let's go back to Sharon with another question.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, I have a couple if no one else, I don't want to take the time from anybody else. But so my question is, during this construction phase, is there a risk of other contaminants leaking into the system, such as lead contaminants or something like that?
Good question. I can take that one too. So part of the process we follow is very, very much mindful of public health protection during this whole entire process. So we follow our best practices in terms of making sure that any portions of the pipe that get dewatered are disinfected following that process. We also make sure that we minimize those portions of the pipe that would be dewatered. So following all those things, and again, the disinfection practice I just noted, we usually do a robust follow-up procedure, which includes, flushing those systems out, and then that's kind of where my team gets involved. Is that we do quite a bit of sampling analysis following that to make sure before anything gets turned on in terms of like these portions of the pipe that start to serve water to the public again, that we've sampled and analyzed them and confirmed the results before they ever, physically speaking, a valve gets turned back on to make sure water is passing through that section of the pipe and serving customers again. So I don't know if there's anything else anybody wanted to add to that from the operational side, but again, those are things we do on a daily basis, pretty routine. Just the scale of it with these larger pipes, kind of same process, just takes a little bit more time, a little bit more resources to do it.
Got it. Thanks. The other question I have is about the results of the tests. When do you publish those? If you can give me just a brief overview of that. And sorry, this is not just for this project in general. And where can I see the detailed results, not just what is published on the website? Is there somewhere where I can get the very detailed results?
Yeah, no, that's another good follow-up question. So typically those kind of results, because they're project specific, we don't post them. That doesn't mean you can't call us and ask us. We'll happily share that stuff. But in terms of post them on just a routine basis, we typically don't. What you would see is the more routine stuff we're doing across the system, which gets published on our website, our annual water quality reports. There's also more detailed analyses that show up on some of those links in our pages. We try hard to make sure we give as much information to people in a digestible format, but there are other things in terms of what you're asking for that are more detailed. We would just generally say, give us an email, give us a call. We'll happily talk about it. We'll happily share it if you've got those specific questions. So I hope that answers your question well enough that, again, we'll share it if you want, if you want it, but generally a lot of folks just, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't mind putting in the chat the phone number or the contact info where we can reach out to get this info. Thank you very much.
Yeah, perfect. We'll post our email, which should be waterquality@tvwd.org in the chat.
Awesome, thanks, Sharon. And we'll go over to Ed for a comment off of the mute here and then we'll go over to the chat. I saw someone had asked one in there, and so Ed, you're up first.
I was just going to refer to the slides 18 and 19 and provide an unsolicited comment about that. One of the reasons I bought my home where I did was because it was in an area that had fluoridated water. That's 35 years ago. At that time it was Wolf Creek Water District, then it became Tualatin Valley. And amongst the people I run with, we're all very pleased about that and are pleased to see it continue without interruption, of course, other than this particular case, which is necessary. That's it. That's the sum of what I was going to say. So thumbs up.
Thanks, Ed. Moving over to the chat, we got a question. Starts with, I appreciate the update on fluoride. Is the change to the piping a change to sourcing? I know that back when I lived in Corvallis, that the perceived water quality differed between winter water from Mary's Peak and summer water from the Willamette in taste and clarity. Joel, do you want to start off with answering that?
Yeah, I can start. Anybody else want to jump in and add to that? So it won't. So the construction project right now is related to our switch, but the switch won't happen yet. So that switch comes around winter of 25, 26. That's when we'll make the switch from one of our existing sources, which is the Portland supply we buy, to the new Willamette River supply, which I can probably just go back a slide really quick. Hopefully folks can see this one, the general high level overview of the new supply system that we're designing and building. So as we just talked about, I'll even go back another couple slides really fast. This system, as you can see where the black triangle is the connection point for the new system being designed, built, and constructed right now, that will tie in. So again, once the tie-in's done, we'll go back to our regular supply, but then in 2025, 26, when the rest of everything gets done, that's when the switch will happen.
Awesome, thanks. And we've got a hand raised from Kurt. Would you like to come off mute and ask us something? Kurt, I think you are still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, for complete transparency, I am a general dentist, retired now. I was trained in Chicago, which is fluoridated, and I can tell you it makes a difference. Also, I want to just do a shout out to your whole crew and particularly your water plant operators for delivering safe and healthy water to your customers. I have two questions. One, I know the history of the combination of Wolf Creek and Metzger's. Has there ever been an attempt to bring fluoridation to that the Metzger Water District? And my second question is, do you allow general public to do a tour of your water plant treatment?
So thanks for two-part question there. The first answer to that is, to the best of our knowledge, there's never been a vote in that Metzger service area to start fluoridation. So, one thing we point out too is now, that the merger of those two systems happened back in the 90s. And moving forward from that point, it is one vote across the district that would be required because it's all part of TVWD now to change anything in terms of, fluoridating all of TVWD or stopping fluoridation. So a little bit of nuance to that. But again, just to directly answer the question as well, there's never been, as far as we have in our records or anything else in terms of the Metzger service area, there was never a vote. And I should also reiterate that we also make it quite clear that this has to be a matter of the citizens to put that together versus, staff or the district itself. And the second question you had, in terms of a tour, absolutely, we can arrange that. TVWD and its partnership with the Joint Water Commission is our other source out here on the west side, and then the other source that we currently acquire from Portland. We can happily facilitate that and get you where you need to go in terms of starting that process if you so want to see it. So I would add, it's pretty cool to see. So, and we'll be offering tours of our new source when the new treatment plant comes online too. So more opportunities in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, email us. Email the same thing. I think Andrea probably posted in the chat, but just email that and we'll get you where you need to go.
Okay, thank you again.
All right, and Joel, we got another question for you in the chat here. It's from Sharon. Thanks to you and to Andrea for the contact info. She asks, do you mind also sharing the details of the filtration/purification systems and methods that we already have in place?
Yeah, so already have in place. So couple things with that. The two sources we currently use, the one from Portland, which is our primary supply volume wise, that's currently an unfiltered source of water, so they don't do conventional treatment. Portland is building a new system, but we won't be on that source by the time that comes online. So the water via Portland, while it doesn't go through conventional treatment, it is still treated. There's some adjustment made to corrosion, pH alkalinity adjustment happens up at Headworks, and there is a post disinfection, if you will, to make sure that there's no microbial contaminants in the water. So that really is kind of the treatment of that side of the system or side of our source. The other source we use, which is called the Joint Water Commission, that's portions of the Tualatin River, upper portion of the Tualatin River, which pulls from Scoggins Reservoir and parts of the coastal watershed range. So that is conventional treatment. That conventional treatment is what we call, it goes through a sedimentation process where there's coagulants added to help suspend particulate matter out. Then it goes through filtration, so a general filtration process through anthracite filtration. At that point, it goes through disinfection, much like the other Portland supply. So we kind of call that conventional treatment. That technology's been around, for several decades, tried and true, and that plant itself has gone through several upgrades over the years. So I didn't see it in the question that you didn't want to know about our future process, so I won't touch on that unless you post something else in the chat.
Thank you. Actually, I'm looking for even more details, but I really appreciate the overview you have given. I want to understand if there's any material you can share with us, documents, presentations, anything like that, that shows in details, are we applying chlorine? Are we applying what other things, and what is the risk of the interaction of chlorine with other media and creating HAA5 and HAA9 and so on? So I want to
Yes.
understand this whole process a bit detailed to the capacity that you have information about it, of course. So
Yeah, so that's an awesome question. So the answer to all that is yes, we can provide way more detail than we talk about here if you're interested. I can give you like the shortest version of that, which is yeah, we use post chlorination for both of our supplies. Obviously, it sounds like you know enough about that in terms of what we call disinfection byproducts. So HA9s, HA5s, THMs, total trihalomethane. So
yep.
all those things that you mentioned are items that we monitor both as they leave the treatment plant and throughout the distribution system. So the primary risk factor with that is really about organic content and age. That's one of the reasons why we monitor for that extensively in our system. So Sharon, that information does get posted in the available information online. We are happy to provide more details offline though, just largely because we could probably spend the next 2 hours going to that conversation. So
Thank
if
you.
you
Thanks for the
yeah,
openness. Yep. Thanks.
yeah, if you email us, we will direct you everywhere you need to go and provide you what you need.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely, Shireen. Please follow up with us with an email. It sounds like might be worth a face-to-face with you to go over the integration. I mean, we have a lot of stuff, and if I don't know if Dave Kraska is wanting to add anything here, but there's a lot of work been going on and on an ongoing basis to put plans together to manage that part of the supply chain.
And while we have Joel and Dave and Pete as well teed up, the next question might really apply to all three of you. Joel, we'll start with you and we'll let Pete build on this from there. We have a comment or a question. I understand that the construction means temporary changes. Joel said that, quote, the switch will happen in the 25-26 timeframe, but I'm not clear on what the switch implies. Is it just from one Willamette source supply, Portland, to another TVWD, or surface to Willamette River? So Joel, would you like to start off, and then Pete and potentially Dave can jump in on what the water supply integration and that eventual air quotes switch is going to be?
Yeah. Good point of clarification. So the switch that will happen during that time frame by the midpoint of 2026 is we will no longer be using the supply we purchased from Portland, and we'll be switching to the Willamette River. So that isn't currently one of our supply sources. There are other communities that use it right now down south of us, Wilsonville and Sherwood. But again, just to reiterate, the supply we buy from Portland will no longer be used, and we will be switching to the Willamette River. We will continue to use our supply from what we refer to as the Joint Water Commission, which is the Tolton River supply in the coastal range. So now, Pete, you want to add anything else?
Only to say that the Willamette's been used as a source for the city of Wilsonville and the city of Sherwood for quite some time. So there's an existing treatment plant down there. They've got over 20 years of good performance out of that plant, and those communities have been using that water. So did that? I would check back to the person last name of Watson who asked that question and make sure that we covered everything that they were looking for.
Awesome. Thank you to you both. And as of right now, the last comment here is a thank you to Andrea for the link to the project details and the treatment plant, and another thanks. So right now, I'm not seeing any other comments or questions in the chat, and no other hands raised other than Shireen, who I think that hand's just been raised for a little while now. But please feel free to come off of mute and ask any other questions with the group. And we're happy to stay here until everyone's got answers that they're looking for.
Thank you. I appreciate the patience. No, it was by mistake. I removed it. Thanks so much.
That's great. Thank you for asking so many good questions and giving us an opportunity to talk about water in a detail that most other folks might not always ask these questions. So I'll go ahead and offer a last call for questions in the chat, or for folks that are on the phone or have a microphone available. And with that, I'll send this back over to Joel and Andrea to wrap up for the day.
Okay, well, we'd just like to thank our customers for joining us. Oh, good, we have another hand. That's what we were hoping for, is to keep the conversation going. As we said, no water subject is off limits here. Ask away, and so I'm going to hand it back over to you, Justin, to talk to Armando.
Armando, what's your question? Armando, if you're asking something, you might still be muted. Oh, in the chat here, he says recommendations while fluoride is not being provided, just brush teeth more often. Joel, why don't you go on that one real quick for us?
Yeah. Sorry, jokes aside. Yes, brush teeth more often and floss always, as our dentists always tell us. But generally speaking, what we've said about this process is reach out to your dental provider. Given the pause, what we've heard back from some dental providers is that it's temporary. This is a short duration period that we're doing this, so you likely may not hear any additional follow-up or any additional steps needed. But ultimately, we're referring folks to their dental providers to ask that question.
Awesome, thank you. And check the chat one more time. Armando says thanks. All right, then we will turn this back over to Andrea.
Okay, again, we just want to thank our customers for joining us. Today's Talking Water was on fluoride and the construction related pause to adding that to our primary service area, about 90% of our customers in the Wolf Creek service area. Feel free to reach out to us by email or phone. Our phone number is 848-3000, the 503 prefix, and wq@tvwd.org for questions related to water quality and fluoridation. And the recording and the slide deck for this will be on our website within an hour or so. And again, we just want to thank you for your time today. Thanks, Joel and Justin and Pete for doing the heavy lifting on the presentation, as well as the customers who joined and gave us feedback. We really appreciate having you with us today.
Likewise, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining today.